Hi friends. It's been a minute. Okay, so my uploads have, I mean, if you've been on this channel for any amount of time, you would know that my uploads have never been the most consistent. But I am trying to adhere to some kind of schedule, so in accordance to that schedule, I've not been super consistent. But, it's not my fault. Okay, I've been busy with college, and also I got my COVID booster. Oh, somebody just drove by. I got my COVID booster, so when I got it, I kind of like knocked out for like 2 days. I was very sleepy. Otherwise, like I felt fine after getting it. It hurt. I felt like the shot hurt a little bit more than when I got my first 2 doses of. I got Pfizer, by the way, if you're curious. But I feel like when I got my 2 doses of Pfizer, like neither one, I did not feel a thing. Like it was like so quick. It's like we're done. I was like, oh, okay. But with the booster actually kind of like hurt more, and it was like longer too, in terms of like of how long they had the needle in my arm. But whatever, it's over now, so I'm fine. I've come a very long way. I used to be like, I'm still very afraid of needles, but obviously I've gotten every vaccine I've ever needed to get because I'm not trying to get sick. So I've obviously had to kind of like suck it up to get my various vaccines over the years, but I'm very afraid of needles. Well, used to be more so, still very afraid, but I feel like I've come a long way. I've like as of last year, I've stopped crying at every needle I've gotten, which is an improvement for me. Anyway, if you're wondering what this video is about, well, you probably already know because you clicked on it and you saw the title. As you may recall, in my playwriting and screenwriting video, I mentioned that I was gonna do another video to talk about writer's block and burnout, and that's this video. That's what we're gonna talk about today. But one more thing before we start. So on Black Friday, I hung out with my friends. We didn't go like Black Friday shopping. We literally went to one store and then got food. But I got, and this is the only thing I bought. We went to this little store that was like really cute. I had like a bunch of like various stationery stuff, and I got this little like journal notebook thing, and it's so cute. It's like mermaid themed. It has this little like magnetic kind of like little thingamajig, and it's super cute. I love the color, and I think it's a really perfect size too. Cars driving by. I really hope they're not looking at me because I'm a little self-conscious, but it's okay. It's okay, we power through. But yeah, so I got a cute little journal. Did I need another journal? No, I didn't. But I'm an adult, and I paid this with my own money, so, whatever, shut up. Sorry, I had to take a little water break. But yeah, so to start off, because sorry, I spent like the first couple minutes of this video talking about things that had nothing to do with the actual subject of the video, as per usual. So, writer's block and burnout. Not fun. Not very fun. So for me, writer's block and burnout, they kind of go hand in hand. It's like when I get writer's block, it's basically only a matter of time before I'm feeling burnt out. Because obviously when I'm like in writer's block and I'm trying to force ideas to come, it gets very exhausting and mentally draining, and then I'm burnt out. So just it's kind of like it's like a snowball effect. That's what I was trying to think of. It's like a snowball kind of effect. It's like I get the writer's block, and then I'm trying to force creativity to come, and it's not coming, and then burnt out. So snowball. Okay, so my burnout, sorry, I forgot what we were talking about for a second. My burnout is generally brought on by 2 main factors. 1 being my perfectionism, and 2 being my classes. As I mentioned in my playwriting and screenwriting video, while it is a lot of fun being a playwriting and screenwriting major, Um, I the fact that I have to meet a lot of frequent deadlines can make it not so fun at times. You know, I'm not a machine. I can't just pop out new ideas like at the drop of a hat. Like, so essentially when I'm having to be writing like all the time, nonstop, constantly like being pushed to like come up with like new ideas all the time, it can be very mentally draining. Um, I thought someone was knocking. But yeah, it can be very mentally draining. And that like coupled with my because I get really frequent writer's block. So when you put those two things together, it's a very unfortunate combination that I really dislike. Oh, also, I kind of just noticed something as I was like watching back the previous clips I did. When I'm like trying to think of something, I have a little bit of a tendency. You guys haven't really seen that much of it yet, but I have a tendency to either like flap my hands or wiggle my fingers or do kind of like a little bit of both. So if I do that, that's what's happening in my brain. I'm like trying to think of what I was either trying to say or think of an idea or something like that. Anyway, my perfectionism. Let's talk about that for a minute. I am very much a perfectionist in everything that I do, but particularly when it comes to my writing, because writing is something I take a lot of pride in. It's like writing, like, you know, that's my thing. It's my thing. So like for me, if I'm gonna write something, I want it to be like absolutely like perfect, which I know is very unrealistic, but it doesn't stop my brain from trying to just like make everything perfect all the time. Um, but yeah, so sometimes what will kind of happen is that I'll be very hesitant to like start writing anything at all if I feel like what I write isn't going to be like my absolute best, most amazing work I've ever written, which is not good. But that happens a lot. But yeah, so anyway, as I'm kind of like talking about this, you guys might be wondering, so Jamie, like how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the writer's block and burnout, which is probably why you clicked on the video in the first place, because you wanted to know how I deal with these things. And while my tips aren't like super, tips that I have aren't like super groundbreaking or like revolutionary, they are things that have helped me. So if you are a writer, I hope that they help you. Or if you're not a writer and you're just watching this because you want to support me, thank you. But yeah, so without further ado, let us get into my tips. Okay, so my first tip is consume new media, be it a show, new album, video game, book, movie, whatever. Like, consume any new medium. I often kind of like the times where I've like gotten some of my best ideas is when I'm like watching just like any new show, particularly the ones for me that I had watched that like were really stimulating to my creative brain. They're both animes, by the way, Erased and The Promised Neverland, which I highly recommend both of them if you haven't watched them and you like anime. But yeah, both of them very stimulating for my creative brain. Also, when I watched Violet Evergarden, love that one. That's like one of my favorite animes of all time. Like very stimulating for my creative brain. I also like those because they were short, so I was able to kind of like just like binge them all like really quickly, which I think is useful if you're gonna like, what I mean like kind of like consume new media. And maybe again, I'm not saying these is like definite, like this is what you should definitely do, but I feel like consuming something that's like a little bit shorter, so again like a shorter kind of like anime that's like one's like 12 or 13 episodes, or just like listening to like an album or an EP or like whatever might be better than to like make the commitment of like watching something like really really long, like a show that's been on for like 17 seasons or something. I don't know. But yeah, so I just think doing something that kind of like helps to stimulate your creative brain, I think really helps. At least it's helped for me. Okay, so for my second tip is to just write everything down. Write down whatever you're thinking, because like I promise, even if it's bad, even if you think that it's bad, just write it down. Like if you're trying to write down if you're trying to come up with something for just like any story that you're writing, and you kind of have been thinking about like a certain direction it could go in, but you're like, I don't really like that. Write it down anyway. Write it down and save it. Like, something that my playwriting professor for this semester has always kind of like told us is save everything. And she's right. Save everything. Everything that you write. Even if you feel like it's bad, just save it. Like, write it down anyway. Because like you kind of just have to like force yourself to write sometimes, because like sometimes there are times where you just have like no ideas, but there are also, I feel like kind of in my case a lot, is that I do have an idea, but I just don't want to write it down because I don't think it's good. So write it down, save it, and just so that it's there, just so that it stops taking up space in your brain. I found that to be very, very useful. I really like that tip, because, don't get me wrong, it can definitely be hard, again, because as a perfectionist, like, I want what I'm writing to be good, and so I don't want to write bad things or stuff that I think is bad, but sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you just need to write. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere. And so my third tip, which at least for me lately has been the most useful of these tips, is change mediums. And what I mean by this is, think about like when you're writing, what do you use to write? Do you use like a notebook? Do you use your laptop? Like what do you use as kind of like your preferred writing medium? Personally, I write primarily on my laptop just because it's easier and it's faster, and I use Google Docs, so like everything auto saves, which is very nice. But yeah, but I've discovered, and this is something I discovered a few weeks ago, because I was having these ideas for an episode of something I was trying to write, but like I don't even know how to explain this. There might be a name for this kind of thing, but I don't have the name for it. But it was like, I had the ideas that I wanted to write, but for some reason, I just like couldn't bring myself to type it out. I don't know why. And this isn't so much like, obviously I was talking in the last clip of like, sometimes like you have ideas but you think they're bad and that's why you don't want to write them down. These were ideas I actually liked, but for some reason I couldn't bring myself to write them down. That still might have been my perfectionist brain talking, being like, they're not good enough. These aren't good ideas. But what kind of happened is, this was just kind of like a random idea that I got. I was like, I'm gonna write them down on my Post-its, because I have a shit ton of Post-its in my desk. So I just took out a little thing of my Post-its, and I must have written on like 40 Post-its. Literally, like, I was counting them. I was numbering them just so that I can also have them in like the proper order I needed them to be in. I wrote on like 40 Post-its. Like, for some reason, I don't really know why, but changing the medium I was using for writing, like, it like unlocked something in my brain. Like, it just like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like something in my brain like clicked, and I was suddenly able to write again. So that was really cool. Again, there might be a name for that, but I don't, for like what that kind of feeling is called, but I don't know what it is. Share with me if you understand what I'm talking about though, and you know what that is though, because I would love to know if there is actually like a name for what happened there. But yeah, and that is it for all of my tips for dealing with writer's block and burnout, because let's face it, these are things, and just as any artist is like, these are things that you're going to kind of deal with no matter what. So it's kind of, I'd like to think of it more of as dealing with these things and not getting rid of them, because like they're just kind of a part of the process, and as much as they're annoying and as much as they suck when they happen, they're gonna happen. So, you know, it's about managing them, even though you can't necessarily like get rid of them completely. And yeah, I hope you guys found these tips at least somewhat helpful. Again, I know they're not like the most like revolutionary, like, oh my gosh, wow, you're a genius for thinking of these things, because I know I'm not like the first person who has ever thought of like any of these things, but hopefully they were helpful to you. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.